wind howled through the mountain pass, rattling the glass of the van windows like invisible fingers tapping a warning. It was nearly dusk when the silver van with license plate 77B1199 climbed the winding roads of Misty Pass. The air grew colder, the mist thicker, and the trees on either side seemed to lean in, whispering secrets no one wanted to hear. Inside the van, 7 college students from Da Nang University were huddled in laughter and discussion. They were on their way to Lambeen Plateau to document a series of folklore tales for a graduation thesis. It was meant to be a week of interviews, exploration, and perhaps a little fun. Among them sat Tristan, the ever-curious journalism student with a sharp eye and a notebook full of questions. Beside him, Emma, his closest friend, wore noise-canceling headphones, nodding gently to her music while filming the view with a handheld camera. In the back, 2 others, Kai and Min, argued playfully over whether ghost stories were real. The driver, an old man named Uncle Ben, had been quiet since they entered the mountain region. He gripped the wheel tighter than necessary, his eyes darting frequently toward the rearview mirror. "This place, it's always been strange," he mumbled under his breath, barely audible. "What was that, Uncle Ben?" asked Tristan from the passenger seat. "Nothing," he said quickly, but then sighed. "Just, if we get through the pass before sundown, we'll be fine. Otherwise, stay quiet. Don't attract attention." Tristan raised an eyebrow. "Attention from what?" Before he could get a reply, the van jolted violently. A loud hiss came from the engine. The brakes squealed. Then crash. The van skidded, hit a rock, and flipped onto its side with a thunderous slam. Tristan woke to the distant sound of birds and the wet smell of soil. His head throbbed. The van was sideways in a shallow ditch. Emma sat beside him, her forehead bleeding. "Are you okay?" she croaked. They quickly checked on the others. Miraculously, all were alive, though some with minor cuts and bruises. The mist around them had grown unnaturally thick, making it hard to see more than a few meters ahead. "What the hell happened?" Kai groaned, helping Min climb out. "The brakes failed," Uncle Ben said, his voice trembling. "It was like something was pulling us." "Let's call for help," Emma said, pulling out her phone, but there was no signal. None of them had any reception. The GPS showed a blank screen, like they were in a dead zone. As they gathered their bags and climbed out, a figure appeared in the mist. It was an old woman, dressed in a brown robe and holding a walking stick adorned with red cloth. Her eyes were sharp despite her age, and she looked directly at Tristan. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Everyone froze. "Who are you?" Emma asked. "My name is Aunt Lynn. I live not far from here. The spirits of Misty Pass do not welcome strangers, especially not at dusk." They exchanged nervous glances. What choice did they have? Aunt Lynn led them to her home, a small, wooden house built between 2 ancient fig trees. Wind chimes made of bones and bells hung from the eaves, clinking softly with each breeze. The scent of burning herbs filled the air. Inside, the walls were lined with jars of powder, bundles of dried leaves, and shelves of old books written in faded ink. On a table sat a wooden statue of a woman with a snake wrapped around her. "You're lucky," Aunt Lynn said as she lit a lantern. "The mountain spirits tried to take you, but they failed. Not many are so fortunate." Emma looked unsettled. "What do you mean by take us?" Aunt Lynn paused, then pointed to the statue. "The woman of the pass. Long ago, she was betrayed and left to die in these woods. Her spirit never left. She waits for travelers to cross her path, and she marks those who enter her land with disrespect." Tristan's skin crawled. "Are we marked?" Aunt Lynn nodded. "At least one of you is. I felt it when I touched the mist." Suddenly, Kai coughed violently, spitting up something black. Everyone turned in horror as he doubled over. "Get him on the mat," Aunt Lynn shouted. They rushed Kai to the woven mat in the center of the room. Aunt Lynn opened a wooden box and began placing small charms on his chest. She chanted softly, burning a bundle of sage and placing droplets of red liquid on his forehead. "It's begun," she said. "He has been chosen." Tristan's heart pounded. "Chosen for what?" She turned slowly toward him. "For a curse older than the mountains." That night, none of them slept well. Strange noises echoed outside, the dragging of feet, the sound of sobbing. The mist never lifted, and the wind carried a whisper that sounded like words. Tristan sat by the window, clutching his notebook, unsure whether to write down what he had just witnessed or pray it had been a nightmare. The curse of Misty Pass had awakened, and their journey had only just begun. The chill of the mountain night seeped into every bone, heavier than any cold they had ever known. Aunt Lynn's house was quiet, save for the faint ticking of a brass clock and the occasional groan from the wooden beams above. Tristan couldn't sleep. Images of Kai coughing up black ichor, the old wooden statue, and the haunting whispers of the forest kept replaying in his head. Just as he was about to close his eyes, a sharp knock echoed through the house. 3 deliberate raps. Then silence. Everyone stirred. Aunt Lynn opened the door slowly, her eyes narrowing at the darkness outside. Standing there was a woman in her late 30s, her face streaked with tears and rain. In her arms was a boy no older than 10, limp and pale, with sweat beading on his forehead. "Please, help us," the woman begged. "He's burning up. No one else would take us in." Aunt Lynn let them in wordlessly. The woman sat on the floor with the boy in her lap. "His name is Liam. He was bitten by something. I thought it was a snake. But then these marks appeared." She unwrapped a thin blanket covering the boy's chest. Gasps filled the room. Across Liam's torso was a trail of dark red scales forming a spiral pattern, almost alive under his skin. It looked like the path of a serpent, but one too precise, too unnatural to be caused by any living creature. "That is not a snake bite," Aunt Lynn whispered, her voice hoarse. "That is a sigil of possession. He's been claimed." "Claimed by what?" Emma asked, clutching her arms. "The nameless Coil," Aunt Lynn replied. "An ancient spirit that takes root through cursed serpents. The mark begins like a bite but turns into a gateway." Tristan stepped closer. "A gateway to what?" "To death. Or worse." Aunt Lynn immediately began preparations. She cleared the main room, drew a chalk circle laced with silver dust and black pepper, and placed the boy in the center. Around him, she laid out jars, one filled with bat bones, another with dried centipedes, and one with crushed onyx stones. Outside, thunder rumbled. The mist thickened once more, pressing against the house like a living thing. Liam suddenly sat bolt upright, eyes wide but not seeing. He began to speak. But it wasn't in Vietnamese. It was something older, filled with harsh clicks and elongated vowels that scraped the air. Emma backed away. "That's not his voice." Aunt Lynn nodded. "No. The spirit is using him now." From beneath Liam's fingernails, blood began to seep. "Tristan," the voice from the boy growled. "You should not have come." Tristan froze. "Me? What does it want with me?" "You opened the gate. When your blood fell on the stone." Tristan's breath caught. Back at the crash site, he had cut his hand trying to help someone out. His blood had dripped on a large mossy boulder by the roadside. The one he now remembered had strange carvings on it. "The stone is a seal," Aunt Lynn said grimly. "One meant to keep the nameless Coil bound. You've broken its rest. A ritual had to be done before sunrise." They gathered herbs, candles, and an old bronze bowl. Aunt Lynn began chanting, calling on protective spirits. Outside, the wind turned violent, howling like 1,000 wolves. The house groaned. The mist pressed against the windows so thickly it was as if they were underwater. Tristan and Emma were instructed to hold Liam's arms while Aunt Lynn placed a curved dagger over his chest. "This will not cut flesh," she said, "but it will cut spirit." As the chant reached its climax, the scales on Liam's body began to pulse. Something beneath them wriggled. Then, with a scream that was both the boy's and not the mark, burst open, and a thin, black serpent slithered out of his chest, hissing, its eyes glowing a deep crimson. Before anyone could move, Aunt Lynn stabbed it mid-air, the dagger passing through like light through smoke. The snake screeched and burst into 1,000 sparks that vanished instantly. Liam collapsed, his chest steaming. The room fell into silence. Later that night, as Aunt Lynn burned the remains of the ritual, Tristan sat outside, staring at the sky. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. "I know," she said, sitting beside him. "But intent doesn't matter with spirits like this. It only takes action." "Is it over?" he asked. She looked up at the moon. "For Liam?" "Yes." "But for you?" "No. That snake was only a scout. The coil has awakened, and it knows your name now." A shiver passed through him, but not from the cold. From inside the house, Kai coughed again, deep, rough, and unnatural. Emma screamed. They rushed in. Kai stood in the corner of the room, his eyes rolled back, and black veins spreading across his face. Aunt Lin whispered, "The curse has found its next host." The morning brought no sunlight, only a pale, gray haze that felt more like a bruise upon the sky than a dawn. The forest around Aunt Lin's house remained silent, too silent, as if every bird, insect, and creature had taken shelter from something watching from the trees. Inside, the scent of burned sage still lingered in the air, but it no longer masked the unease that now weighed heavy upon everyone's shoulders. Kai sat propped up in the corner, his face drenched in sweat, skin pale as ash. His breathing was shallow, almost imperceptible. Dark veins had begun to spread across his neck, crawling like spider legs from beneath his shirt. Tristan watched helplessly. "He was fine last night." "No," Aunt Lin replied. "He was not. The spirit that left Liam did not vanish. It moved." Emma shivered. "Into Kai?" Aunt Lin nodded. "Yes. But it didn't simply possess him. It nested." The group gathered in a circle. Aunt Lin laid out a series of old parchment pages covered in strange diagrams. They depicted human figures with serpents curling through their chests, skulls split open to reveal black seeds, and creatures with no eyes feeding off glowing orbs that hovered over sleeping victims. "This isn't possession," she said. "This is infection." "Infection?" Tristan repeated. "The nameless coil," she explained, "is not a single entity. It is a hive, a network of shadow worms and ancient hunger. It doesn't possess your mind. It burrows into your soul." She turned to Kai, who was now beginning to twitch, his head jerking to one side unnaturally. "And once the soul is consumed, the body becomes a shell." Aunt Lin began preparing a ritual she hadn't performed in over 20 years, a soul anchoring. "We must force the spirit to anchor itself in one place," she said. "Then we can draw it out." She gathered rare ingredients, lunar salt, roots from a ghost fig tree, 3 candles made from ox tallow, and a bowl of crushed snake bones. She drew a 7-pointed star on the wooden floor with her blood. Emma and Tristan were tasked with holding Kai down again, though this time he thrashed and screamed with such inhuman strength that it took Min and Bao, two of the larger students, to help restrain him. Aunt Lin began chanting, her voice rising in pitch until it was nearly a scream. Her eyes rolled back, her hands glowing faintly with a yellow hue. The candles flickered violently. Suddenly Kai stopped moving. His eyes snapped open. But they were no longer his eyes. They were black. Empty. Endless. You cannot take what is already home, the voice that came from his mouth said, deep and alien. Aunt Lin ignored it, slamming her hands onto Kai's chest. A shockwave burst from his body, throwing everyone back. The air turned icy. The windows cracked. The lights went out. Then black liquid began to pour from Kai's mouth. Thick, putrid, and alive. It crawled down his chin, onto the floor, steaming like acid. The group watched in horror as a shape began to form in the black pool, a long, twisted worm, covered in eyes and barbs, coiling and uncoiling. Aunt Lin cried out, "Get me the dagger." Emma tossed her the ceremonial blade just in time. With a deep yell, Aunt Lin plunged the dagger into the black mass. The spirit shrieked a high-pitched, metallic sound that made everyone clutch their heads. Then, in a final convulsion, the black rot burst into smoke and vanished. Kai collapsed, unconscious but breathing. His color slowly returned, and the black veins began to recede. Emma wept quietly in the corner. Min held his hands together, mumbling a prayer. Tristan was frozen. He didn't move until Aunt Lin laid a hand on his shoulder. "We've only delayed it," she said. "What do you mean?" She looked him in the eye. This was only a fragment. The true spirit, the Coil's heart, is still out there. It's coming. And now, it knows your faces. That night, the group insisted on sleeping in the main room together, too afraid to be alone. Tristan dreamed. He stood in a forest of bones. The trees were skeletons, the leaves were human teeth. A river of black water snaked through the landscape. On the opposite bank stood a figure. It wore no face. Only a serpent's skull. It raised its hand and pointed at him. Then, it spoke. 13 days remain. Tristan awoke with a scream. Aunt Lin was already sitting beside him. "You saw it," she said. "Yes." "That means it's begun." The next morning, they made a decision: they couldn't stay. The house was no longer safe. The spirits were aware. They would find them again. Aunt Lin packed her sacred texts and old satchel. "We're going to see someone I haven't spoken to in decades," she said. "He may have the knowledge we need to stop this." "Who is he?" asked Bao. "Master Kuang, Keeper of the Gate of Roots." He lives beyond the forest, where no road dares pass. The journey would not be easy. But if they didn't go, none of them would survive. And deep in the mountain, beneath a hollow stone, something ancient began to stir. The next morning was not morning at all. The mist clung so thickly to the treetops that it dimmed every trace of sunlight, casting the forest in an eternal gray twilight. No birds sang. No insects buzzed. The world was holding its breath. Aunt Lin walked ahead, her worn staff tapping against mossy stones, the only sound breaking the oppressive silence. Behind her followed Tristan, Emma, Kai still recovering, and the others. Each carried a small charm Aunt Lin had given them, etched with ancient runes and anointed in pig's blood. They won't stop the spirits, she said, but they'll delay them. If you hear someone whisper your name, do not answer. Even if it sounds like your mother. That didn't help. They had been walking for nearly an hour when the trees began to change. The trunks grew thicker, older, some twisted into unnatural spirals. Roots tangled like nests of serpents, and the air carried a strange copper scent. Emma stopped. Look at this. She pointed to one of the trees. On its bark was carved a spiral of symbols similar to the ones Tristan had seen on the mossy rock back at the crash. But this time, they weren't faded. They were fresh, oozing dark sap. It's watching us, Kai muttered, eyes darting. What is? Min asked. That tree. It blinked. Before anyone could reply, a rustle to their right sent everyone into a defensive stance. From the trees stepped a man. Tall. Thin. Dressed in layers of dark brown robes. His skin was the color of clay, and his eyes were entirely white, no pupils, no irises. Just white. Master Kwang, Aunt Lin said softly. He bowed slightly. You brought the cursed ones. We need sanctuary, she replied. And answers. He turned without speaking and motioned for them to follow. They arrived at his home, or what passed for one. A low, circular hut of woven roots sat in the center of a clearing. Instead of doors, thick strands of vines parted to let them in. The air inside was warm, fragrant with incense and old bark. Master Kwang sat cross-legged and gestured for them to do the same. You carry the rod, he said to Kai. It has not left you fully. I know, Kai whispered. I feel it. It dreams through me. Kwang nodded. That is its nature. It waits. Watches. Learns you from the inside. Aunt Lin removed an old scroll from her satchel. You were the first to seal the gate. You know its design. Kwang placed his hand over the scroll, closed his eyes, and murmured in a language that made Tristan's skin crawl. The scroll unfurled by itself, revealing a map not of places, but of realms. One was labeled, the hollow coil. Another, the bleeding root. And between them, a gate. Marked only as the memory threshold. The spirit you've awoken is part of a network, Kwong explained. The coil exists between layers of memory. Wherever trauma festers, it grows. Death is only one of its faces. So how do we stop it? Tristan asked. You don't, Kwong said calmly. But you can seal it. With a sacrifice. The room fell quiet. What kind of sacrifice? Emma asked. The kind that bleeds truth. One who has walked through death and returned. They all looked at Kai. No, he said, backing away. You can't be serious. You are the one it marked, Kwong replied. You've already been inside. You are the doorway now. Aunt Lin stood. He's too weak. No, Kai said, gritting his teeth. I'll do it. That night, they prepared the threshold ritual. It had to be done at a place called the Spiral Tree, located deep within the root forest. It was said to be the origin of the coil's infection and nexus where its roots first broke into this world. They walked in silence, carrying only the tools required, the bloodstone dagger, 3 glass vials filled with dream ash, and a mirror that reflected only shadow. The spiral tree stood at the center of a sunken grove. Its trunk curved into a helix, bark etched with screaming faces. Kai stepped forward, trembling. Place the mirror in the roots, Kwong said. Then cut your hand and let your blood fall on it. The tree will open. Tristan gripped Kai's shoulder. You sure? I'm already halfway gone, he muttered. Might as well finish the job. He sliced his palm. Blood dripped onto the mirror. The ground shook. The tree groaned. Then it opened. A fissure appeared in its base, like the mouth of a beast yawning wide. Inside was not wood but memory. Flickering images of dead friends, childhood fears, and traumas long buried. Kai stepped inside. For hours they waited. Then, a scream. Kai stumbled out, clutching something in his hand, a glowing orb of black and gold. The seed, Kwong said. He's brought back the source. Suddenly black tendrils erupted from the tree. The coil had awakened. Emma screamed. Men tried to run but tripped. A tendril wrapped around Tristan's leg, pulling him toward the fissure. Kai, in a last act of will, crushed the orb in his hand. The light exploded. The tendrils burned. The tree howled and collapsed into ash. When the light faded, Kai was on the ground, unconscious but breathing. The forest was silent. Master Kwang looked at them with hollow eyes. The seal is temporary. But you have bought time. Time to learn the truth. Tristan helped Kai to his feet, trembling. What truth? That the coil is not the disease, Kwang whispered. It is the symptom. What's the disease then? Kwang stared deep into his eyes. You. They returned to Aunt Lin's hut before sunrise. The forest had changed again. The trees no longer whispered, now they listened. The mist followed them, curling around ankles like leashes, never quite touching, but always there. Kai lay in a deep sleep, feverish but peaceful, almost too peaceful. Aunt Lin watched him with concern, her fingertips stained with salt and ash from the ritual. He's crossed something, she said. Something old. He didn't just seal the gate, he brought something back with him. Tristan sat beside the fire, staring into the flames, trying to understand the things he had seen. The fissure in the tree. The flickering visions inside his own memories twisted. Faces from his childhood, distorted. His mother sobbing behind a locked door. A mirror that reflected a version of himself, smiling with black eyes. Whatever the coil was, it wasn't just a spirit. It was a collector. A parasite of memory. A devourer of what made people human. That night, Kai awoke screaming. Don't let him in, he shouted. The group rushed over. Who, Kai? Tristan asked, gripping his arm. Kai trembled. The Watcher. He's in the mist. I saw him in the tree. He saw me back. Aunt Lin's face paled. You saw the Watcher? Yes. He spoke my name. He said I was the threshold. What does that mean? Lin hesitated. The Watcher is the one who remembers what the world forgets. He records trauma, pain, guilt. When you opened the gate, you didn't just invite spirits, you became visible to him. And now? Emma asked. Now he will follow. That night, they locked every window, every door, and circled the house in protective chalk symbols. Aunt Lin scattered bones of black crows, hung charms over the hearth, and burned hair from a stillborn calf in a copper dish. Despite everything, they still heard knocking. 3 knocks. Then silence. Then 3 again, closer. Min clutched his chest. It's just the wind. No, whispered Kai. It's him. Tristan opened his notebook, hoping to distract himself, but instead found a new drawing there, one he hadn't made. A figure in the mist. Faceless. Cloaked in smoke. With hundreds of eyes blooming from its back like mushrooms. Then he realized the ink was still wet. The next morning, Master Kwong appeared at their door, his robe stained with ash. "You've stirred something worse," he said grimly. "The coil is a symptom, but now the eye has turned." "What eye?" Tristan asked. "The first watcher. The one above the threshold. It's older than names. It existed before language. It speaks not in sound but in events. Tragedy is its dialect." Emma stood. "What does it want from us?" "You. Your grief. Your regrets. That is its currency." Kwong led them to a nearby lake, still, glass-like, reflecting not their present selves, but younger, broken versions. In the water, Emma saw her teenage self curled in a hospital chair, whispering to her dying grandmother. Tristan saw a boy kneeling beside a coffin. "This lake is not water," Kwong said. "It is memory, rendered physical. The eye has begun mining you." "How do we stop it?" Min asked. "You confront what you've buried. Not just wounds, but the truths you denied. You walk through your own abyss." Each was asked to enter the water alone. Emma went first. The others watched her step into the lake and vanish beneath the surface without a splash. Time passed. 10 minutes. Then 15. Then, she emerged, gasping for air, eyes wide with tears but stronger. Tristan followed next. The water swallowed him like ink. He found himself in a hallway. His childhood home. Voices echoed down the hall. Screaming. A door cracked open. He stepped inside. His father stood there, belt in hand, face blank with rage. Little Tristan sat crying in the corner. "No," Tristan whispered. "Not again." The watcher stood in the corner of the room, silent. "You could have stopped it," a voice said. "I was a child." "You still are." Tristan reached down and touched the boy's shoulder. "I'm sorry." The room shattered like glass. He woke up, coughing, in the lake. Aunt Lin helped him out. "You've begun the separation," she said. "Now the eye cannot feed on you so easily." That night, Kai's fever broke, but with it came new knowledge. "I saw the core," he whispered. "The real coil." "What is it?" "It's not a creature. It's a prison. Something's inside. And it's breaking out." "What?" Tristan asked. Kai turned his head, eyes full of dread. "A god. Forgotten. Locked behind the gate of names. And now, Emma said. Kai looked at them all. It remembers. They left at dawn, with fog clinging to their boots and prayers clinging to their lips. Aunt Lin had insisted they move quickly. Before the eye finds a body, she said. It's no longer content watching. Master Kwong handed her an old wooden box wrapped in red cloth. Give this to Elder Bei. He's the last gatekeeper of the Red Hollow. The Red Hollow? Emma asked. A place not drawn. Not found. It remembers itself, and will remember you. No one knew what that meant. The journey took them off the paths through briar and bone, across streams where the water flowed upward. Birds circled above them but never sang. Every hour, Aunt Lin would mutter protection spells and mark tree trunks with crushed charcoal. After half a day, the forest began to bleed. Literally. The trees bled. Their bark cracked open and oozed red sap that smelled like rust and rot. The air became warmer, the wind heavier. Emma touched one of the trees and immediately pulled back with a scream, her fingertips covered in blisters. We've crossed the first veil, Aunt Lin said. How many more? Tristan asked. 2. And the third is not a place, but a question. By dusk, they reached the gates of the Red Hollow. It wasn't a village. It wasn't even a clearing. It was a depression in the earth, a massive crater surrounded by trees twisted into spirals. At the center stood a crooked hut of red-painted wood, its windows covered in black cloth. Elder Bei stood outside. Tall. Skin like dried clay. Eyes pale green, like moss underwater. He held a staff made from the spine of some long-dead animal, its vertebrae still clicking. You bring the cursed, he said, his voice both tired and sharp. We bring the truth, Aunt Lin replied. Bei grunted. Same thing. He ushered them into the hut. Inside was silence. No wind. No creak. No life. Just shelves filled with mirrors. Dozens of them. Each one covered. Bei sat beside a fire that had no smoke. You've awakened the eye, he said. And stirred what lies beneath it? We didn't mean to, Tristan said. No one does. Kai sat near the fire, pale and trembling. I saw something, he whispered. Before I passed out. A child. No eyes. Wrapped in a cocoon of red string. Bei looked up sharply. You saw the bound prophet. Emma blinked. What's that? Bei stood, lifted one of the covered mirrors, and unveiled it. The reflection did not show the room. It showed a forest burning. Screams echoed faintly from it. In the distance, a child sat beneath a tree, wrapped in red string. Around him, shadows moved, feeding on the flames. "The prophet is not a person," Bay said. "It's a memory made flesh. A warning. A curse born from an unanswered prayer." He turned to Kai. "If it showed itself to you, then the eye is preparing its next vessel." Tristan's stomach dropped. "Vessel?" "Yes," Bay said. "The eye needs a form. A mouth. A voice. And it chooses those who've seen too much." That night, the hollow came alive. Wind screamed outside. The ground pulsed. Bei, Lin, and Kwang created a protective seal around the hut using crushed bones and blood from a black rooster. Candles made of earwax and snake oil were lit, casting shadows that didn't move with the flame. At midnight, the prophet arrived. Not physically but as a storm. Every mirror in the hut began to rattle. Whispers bled from their frames. Names. Secrets. Grief. Min collapsed, bleeding from his ears. Emma clutched her chest, gasping as if drowning. Tristan looked into one mirror, unable to stop himself. And saw himself hanging from a tree, eyes wide open, smiling. "No," he whispered. The reflection blinked. Bay stepped forward and smashed the mirror. "Do not look at yourself here," he growled. "The hollow has no mercy. It reflects the death waiting inside you." Suddenly, Kai began to convulse again. His mouth opened, but the voice that came out wasn't his. It was feminine. Cold. Ancient. "The threshold is cracking." Bay reacted instantly. He stabbed a silver nail through Kai's shirt and into the floor. A circle of flame erupted around him. "Hold him down," he shouted. Everyone lunged. Kai thrashed, laughed, cried all at once. Then silence. He blinked. "What happened?" "You almost became the door," Bay said quietly. "The eye is not watching anymore. It is arriving." At sunrise, Bay handed Tristan a sealed scroll. "Take this to the mirror orchard. It's the only place left where the eye cannot see. But be warned, many go in. Few come back, whole." "What's in the orchard?" Bay looked at him, and for the first time, looked afraid. "Your true self." The scroll was wrapped in crimson thread, sealed with wax molded into the shape of a closed eye. It pulsed faintly in Tristan's hands, warm to the touch, almost breathing. "Whatever you do," Elder Bay warned, "do not open it until you stand at the orchard's center. The eye can't see inside the orchard yet." but if you open it too soon, it'll follow. Tristan nodded. And if we don't find the orchard? Then the eye won't need to follow. It'll already be in you. The journey began at dawn. Aunt Lin led the way with her talisman lantern, a caged flame fueled by drops of blood and snake venom. The others followed close, silent and alert. The forest beyond the red hollow felt older, as if it remembered their presence with every step. Birds no longer sang. The wind no longer stirred. Even their footsteps seemed muffled, like the world was trying to forget them in real time. This land, Aunt Lin said quietly, wasn't always forest. Long ago, it was a village where people grew trees of memory, each one tied to a soul. Memory trees? Emma asked. Lin nodded. They bore no fruit. Only reflections. Until the eye came. Tristan looked at her. And what did it do? It taught the trees how to lie. By midday, the landscape shifted. Where once stood a forest of shadows, now arose columns of mirrors, stretching up like thin silver trunks. There were no leaves, only shards suspended in the air, glinting softly in a wind that couldn't be felt. The orchard. It was more beautiful and more wrong than anything they'd seen. Each mirror reflected something different. Some showed the forest. Some showed the past. Some showed people who weren't there. Emma paused before one. It showed her and her grandmother, sitting on a porch, laughing. But the moment looped again and again, and her grandmother's face gradually shifted, becoming hollow-eyed and still. "That's not a memory," she whispered. "It's a trap." "It's both," said Aunt Lin. "The orchard feeds on what you won't let go. And then, it lets the eye look through." The scroll began to burn faintly in Tristan's hand. "We're close." They reached the center of the orchard, marked by a great mirror tree. It had no bark, only polished glass twisting upward, its surface shifting like mercury. Tristan unsealed the scroll. The wax popped open with a whisper that wasn't sound but understanding. Inside was a map. But it didn't lead anywhere physical. It led inward. Each of them was asked to press their palm against the mirror tree. Emma went first. She touched the surface and vanished. Then Min. Then Kai. Then Tristan. He awoke standing in his old bedroom. But it wasn't right. Everything was coated in a thin layer of gray ash. His desk was covered in notebooks, each filled with phrases like "I'm sorry I let go," and "It wasn't your fault but it still hurt." He turned and saw himself. The younger him. Sitting on the floor, hugging his knees. And beside him was a figure. Faceless. Tall. Made of hair and teeth. The Watcher. You were always going to end up here, it said, though its mouth didn't move. The coil chose you not because you were weak but because you buried too much. I didn't ask for this, Tristan said. But you obeyed every invitation. Every fear. Every silence. The younger Tristan turned and looked at him. Do you want to forget again? He asked. No, the real Tristan replied. I want to remember it all. Then the room collapsed into mirrors and he fell. He landed at the base of the tree, gasping. Emma, Kai, and Min all returned in similar states, trembling, eyes wide, but somehow, lighter. Aunt Lynn handed Tristan the second half of the scroll. This is what you earned by facing your reflection. It showed a sigil, the gate of 13 eyes. Kai took one look and turned pale. That's what was inside the tree. The thing I couldn't describe. It was watching through all of them. It didn't have a body. It had faces 13. All human. All screaming. Aunt Lynn's voice lowered. That's where the eye feeds. From the mouths of those who never screamed. Suddenly, a sound pierced the orchard. A bell. Faint. Hollow. Repeating. Someone's coming, Min said. No, Aunt Lynn said. Something. The mirrors began to tremble. One by one, they cracked. From the broken glass, figures began to crawl. Pale. Eyeless. Mouth sewn shut. Each wearing the faces the group had seen in their visions. The mirror-born, Aunt Lynn whispered. Spawns of the eye. If they touch you, they take your memory forever. They ran. Tristan grabbed Emma's hand and bolted. The others followed, dodging shards and falling reflections. Behind them, the mirror-born wailed not with sound, but with stolen voices, replayed like broken recordings. You let her die. You laughed when I cried. You forgot me. At the edge of the orchard, the group jumped through a woven portal, a last-minute spell Aunt Lynn carved into the air with her staff. The portal closed just as the first mirror-born reached it, pressing its stitched mouth against the barrier. The whispers stopped. But the memory remained. Back in the red hollow, they collapsed. They had survived the mirror orchard. But they had brought something back. Tristan opened his notebook. Inside was a message in unfamiliar handwriting. I see you. I remember what you forgot. The final gate opens in blood. And beneath it, a name none of them recognized. Vesrod. They did not speak much after leaving the mirror orchard. Each of them bore scars not on skin, but in memory. The kind that whisper to you in silence. the kind that never fully fade. Back at the Red Hollow, Aunt Lynn began preparing the next phase of the journey. Her face was grim, more tired than ever. "You all saw something in the mirrors," she said. "A name." "Vesrot," Tristan said. The moment he spoke it, the wind outside stopped. The shadows seemed to lean in. Elder Bay nodded slowly. "That is not a name. It's a title. A hunger. A memory that survived the end of its own world." "What is it?" Emma asked. "The first eye," Aunt Lynn whispered. "The one that opened before humanity. Before language. The one that devours not people but their meaning." According to the scroll from Mirror Orchard, Vesrot was sealed behind a gate of 13 eyes, a gate hidden in a place called the Hollow Threshold, only accessible through a kinhuiat, a blood mirror forged from one's deepest truth. To reach it, they would need to create one. And to do that, someone would have to bleed their identity. Literally. "It must be a truth never spoken," said Elder Bay. "Something you've buried so deeply, even your dreams avoid it." No one volunteered at first. Until Kai stood. "I'll do it." The ritual began at midnight. They gathered at the oldest part of the Red Hollow beneath a massive dead tree whose branches curled like horns. On the ground, a silver basin was placed. Around it, 13 candles burned black with green flame. Kai sat in the center. Tristan, Emma, and Min stood outside the circle, each holding a mirror shard from the orchard. Aunt Lynn began to chant in a tongue that twisted in the ear, like listening to screams underwater. Kai inhaled deeply, then said, "I saw him die." Everyone froze. Kai's voice shook. "My younger brother. Years ago. He drowned in a canal near our home. I was supposed to be watching him. I got distracted playing a game on my phone. When I looked up, he was gone." The candles flickered wildly. The basin began to tremble. "I never told anyone. I said he wandered off. That I looked away for just a moment. But the truth is I forgot him." Blood began to drip from his eyes. Not tears. Blood. The basin filled with it, and from its surface, a mirror rose. A perfect, crimson oval. Silent. Cold. The blood mirror. Aunt Lynn turned to Tristan. "You're the key. The gate will open for you." "Why me?" "Because Vesrot knows you. Your name has echoed in its void since the crash. You bled first. You remembered last. You've become the bridge." Tristan stepped forward, reached out and touched the mirror. The world vanished. He stood in a realm of darkness but not black. It was red. Like being submerged in blood. The sky above pulsed like a heartbeat. Floating in the air were eyes, 13 of them, each a different color, shape, and size. They blinked in unison. Below them, a door stood upright in the middle of nothingness. Bone white, covered in carvings that twisted when stared at. The gate of 13 eyes. And in front of it stood Vesrod. He was no monster. No beast. He was a mirror, a humanoid shape made entirely of reflective glass. But in every shard, Tristan saw a different version of himself. The liar. The coward. The killer. The forgotten. You have opened what cannot be unopened, Vesrod said, voice smooth as mercury. Why? To stop you, Tristan said. Vesrod tilted his head. Stop me from what? Feeding. Consuming. I do not consume, Vesrod replied. I complete. You forget what pain looks like. I remind you. Suddenly, the ground cracked. From it emerged tendrils of black memory faces of people Tristan had known, their mouths open in silent screams. You think your grief is special? Vesrod said. It is delicious. But you are not unique. He raised a hand. The gate opened. A wind tore through the void made not of air, but voices. Emma's. Kai's. Even Aunt Lynn's. They were being pulled in. Back in the physical world, the mirror in the basin began to vibrate violently. Aunt Lynn screamed a counterspell. Blood dripped from her nose. Tristan. She shouted across the veil. You must choose. Inside the void, Vesrod extended a hand. Come with me, he said. I will let you forget. Forever. Tristan stared at him. Then at the gate. Then, he turned his back. No. He pulled the coil dagger from his side, the same one that once banished the serpent in Kai's chest, and stabbed the mirror that was Vesrod. The void screamed. The gate shattered. The red sky burned. The world inverted. And then Tristan opened his eyes. Back in the red hollow. The mirror was gone. The basin cracked. Kai was unconscious. Aunt Lynn lay slumped beside the candles, breathing shallowly. Emma wept with relief. You made it? Tristan looked at his hands. They were trembling. But he held something. A shard. From Vesrod. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and forgotten memories as the group regrouped in the heart of the red hollow. The shard Tristan held pulsed softly, a rhythmic beat that seemed to echo his own heartbeat. Aunt Lynn's eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but determination burned bright within. We've broken the gate, but shattered pieces only scatter darkness further. Vesrata's shard is a key, but it's also a beacon. Men swallowed hard. A beacon for what? Something far older. Far more dangerous. Elder Bay stepped forward, his voice grave. The giver. Long ago, before time could measure, there existed the giver, an ancient entity responsible for bestowing the first coil upon the world. It is neither god nor demon but a force of creation and destruction entwined. The coil, it explained, is not merely a curse. It is a cycle, a loop of memory, pain, and rebirth that binds souls to the endless dance of suffering and release. Tristan clenched the shard. So Vesrod. He's just part of this cycle. More than that, Aunt Lynn replied. He is the keeper of the gate, but the giver. The giver is the origin. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. From the shadows of the ancient trees emerged a figure cloaked in shifting darkness, a silhouette both massive and ethereal. The giver has heard the breaking of the gate, Bay warned. The figure's voice was like a song sung in a forgotten language, wrapping around their minds. You meddle with forces beyond your understanding. Yet your pain is familiar. Come, join the coil's endless embrace. The group prepared for battle, a ritual of light and shadow. Aunt Lynn began chanting while Bay wielded a staff glowing with ancient runes. Tristan gripped the Vesrot shard tightly, feeling its energy surge. The giver lunged, tendrils of pure darkness spreading toward them. Kai stepped forward, his body still recovering but his spirit aflame. With a roar, he threw himself into the fray, his will fortified by the memories of his lost brother. The battle was fierce and surreal. The forest twisted around them as the giver unleashed waves of torment, forcing them to confront their deepest fears manifesting as tangible illusions. Emma found herself face to face with her grandmother's ghost, torn between love and despair. Men was haunted by the faces of those he had failed to save. Tristan's resolve was tested as visions of himself giving in to the coil flickered in the air. With a cry, Aunt Lynn completed the ritual, binding the giver momentarily with chains of sacred light forged from their combined memories and pain. The giver recoiled, its form fracturing, and with a final, anguished wail, it retreated into the depths of the hollow. Breathless and wounded, the group knew the fight was far from over. But for now, the coil was held at bay. Tristan looked at the shard, now dimmed but warm. This is only the beginning. The red hollow lay silent, but the silence was a lie. Tristan sat by the dying embers of the campfire, the Vesrot shard resting on his palm. It felt heavier than before, as if burdened with unseen weight. Aunt Lynn approached quietly. The battle weakened the giver, but it also opened a door inside each of you. Shadows that wait for the right moment. Shadows? Tristan asked, his eyes narrowing. The memories you thought were buried. The guilt, the fear. They live inside, twisting, waiting to claim you. That night, the group was tormented by vivid nightmares. Emma found herself walking through a burning village, watching helplessly as a young girl herself ran from unseen horrors. Kai was trapped in a dark canal, the water rising, choking him as echoes of his brother's laughter faded. Tristan saw a mirror that reflected not his face but a twisted mask, smiling wickedly back. Morning brought no relief. Antlin gathered them. You must face these shadows. Only by embracing your pain can you hope to break the coil cycle. One by one, they stepped into a circle drawn with silver dust and ashes. A ritual began, an invocation of forgotten names and sacred truths. As chants filled the air, shadows rose from the earth, manifestations of their darkest memories. Tristan's shadow advanced, mocking, cruel, accusing. You betrayed your brother. You forgot your promise. Tristan faltered. But then, the Vesrot shard glowed, its light piercing the darkness. I remember, Tristan said firmly. I remember everything. The shadow screamed and dissipated. Emma's shadow took the form of her grandmother, sorrowful yet fierce. I failed you. I am still here, Emma whispered, tears flowing freely. The shadow softened, then vanished. Kai's shadow was a watery specter, laughing and drowning. You left me behind. No, Kai said, grasping a small toy from his pocket. I carry you always. The shadow dissolved into mist. The ritual ended with the group exhausted but free. Antlin smiled faintly. You have begun healing. But beyond the hollow, the night whispered warnings. The coil was patient. And the giver was preparing its final move. The red hollow had grown colder, as if the forest itself sensed the darkness festering within the group. Since the ritual to banish their shadows, unease settled like a thick fog. Whispers slithered through the trees at night, soft, accusing, almost sentient. Tristan felt it most. The shard of Vesrot hummed with a restless pulse, sinking with his heartbeat but also pulling at something deeper. Antlin gathered them at the ancient circle beneath the blood tree, her face grave. There is a seed within, she said quietly. A part of the coil that has taken root. And it grows. Over the next days, strange things began happening. Men woke one morning with no memory of the previous night. Emma found her belongings scattered, and a chilling message carved into her mirror, you forget, but I remember. Kai's fever returned, worse than before. And Tristan, sometimes he felt his own reflection smile at him in the wrong way. During a tense night watch, Tristan confronted Kai. Are you okay? He asked. Kai's eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight. I'm better than ever. Before Tristan could react, Kai lunged, eyes blazing black. Do not fight it, a voice whispered in Tristan's mind. Kai snarled, the coil remembers. And it wants to feed. The group struggled to restrain Kai as Antlin prepared a sacred ritual, the reclamation of the lost soul. They prepared powders made from crushed bones and petals of the ghost orchid. Antlin chanted ancient incantations, tracing symbols of binding and purification around the clearing. Kai screamed, body twisting unnaturally, tendrils of black smoke rising from his skin. The battle was as much mental as physical. Through sheer will, and the power of their combined memories, they reached Kai's true self, the frightened boy who lost his brother. Tristan held Kai's hand. You're not alone. With a final chant, Antlin cast a net of light that enveloped Kai. The tendrils vanished. Kai collapsed, exhausted but free. The victory was bittersweet. Antlin revealed the truth of Vesrot and the Giver. They are two halves of the same curse. Vesrot, the Keeper, controls the gate. The Giver created the coil to bind pain to souls. But why us? Emma asked. Because pain wants to be remembered. And the coil needs hosts. You are the first to resist. As dawn broke, the shard in Tristan's hand cracked, releasing a burst of light. In the distance, a figure watched. Hidden. Smiling. The air in the red hollow was thick with anticipation, a silence so profound it pressed against their chests like a physical weight. The shard of Vesrot, once warm, now burned cold in Tristan's palm. It was fractured, yet alive, pulsing like the heartbeat of a dying star. Antlin gathered the group one last time beneath the blood tree, its branches gnarled and dripping crimson sap that seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight. We have come to the final gate, she said. The gate of souls, where Vesrot and the Giver converge. Elder Bay led them to the threshold, a massive stone archway etched with runes that shimmered with a spectral light. The ground beneath was cracked, revealing veins of glowing red energy, pulsing like veins of a living creature. This is the moment, Bay said. The coil's heart beats here. Destroy it, and break the cycle. Suddenly, shadows poured from the archway, figures both human and monstrous, faces distorted in agony. Vesrot appeared beside the gate, his glass body reflecting the chaos. You cannot stop what has already begun, he said, voice echoing like 1,000 whispers. The battle erupted. Antlin chanted, weaving spells of binding and light. Bay swung his staff, shattering shadows with beams of pure energy. Kai fought with renewed strength, wielding memories of his brother as a shield and sword. Emma and Min supported with chants and talismans, their voices rising above the cacophony. Tristan faced Vesrot directly, the shard glowing fiercely in his hand. Vesrot smiled, a cruel, fractured thing. You think pain can be destroyed? Pain is eternal. He lunged, glass shards slicing through the air. Tristan dodged, stabbing the shard into Vesrot's chest. The shard shattered, releasing a blinding light. From the light emerged the Giver. A massive entity woven from shadow and blood, its many eyes blinking in unison. The true master, Antlin whispered. The giver roared, shaking the very ground. In the final moments, Tristan raised the Vesrot shard fragments, chanting the sacred words taught by Antlin. The shard's light expanded, engulfing the gate, the giver, and Vesrot. With a deafening explosion, the coil shattered. Silence. The forest exhaled. The red hollow bloomed with life, birds singing, leaves rustling, dawn breaking. Tristan collapsed, exhausted but victorious. Elder Bay smiled. The cycle is broken. But the memories, they remain. Antlin nodded. And so does hope. Title: The Nameless Coil, a dark tale of memory, curse and redemption. Full story in 12 episodes. Description: Dive into The Nameless Coil, a chilling supernatural saga woven with ancient curses, lost memories, and the battle for the soul's freedom. Follow Tristan and his friends as they journey through the haunted Red Hollow, confronting the mysterious Vesrot, the keeper of the gate, and the fearsome giver, the origin of the coil's endless torment. From a near-fatal accident on Misty Pass to the enigmatic Mirror Orchard and the final climactic battle against ancient forces, this 12-episode series explores themes of grief, guilt, and the eternal struggle to break free from cycles of pain. Join us as we uncover secrets buried deep within the mind and spirit, where every reflection hides a forgotten truth, and every shadow holds a memory waiting to be reclaimed. Subscribe and turn on notifications to experience the full story, episode by episode. Dare to remember. Dare to face the coil.